Hello everyone, welcome back again. And in this part of the video, we are going to see industrialization and the connection of industrialization with Romanticism. And the authors, we're just going to take a few poems of William Wordsworth, and we will see how they are portraying industrialization through Romanticism in their poems. So let's get started. I will be sharing my screen. Okay, so let me put this. Okay, we're good. The Industrial Revolution, we're just going to focus on, I'm just going to give a quick summary of what is industrialization. So industrialization was a period that started all over the world. We are unsure when was it started, where was it started, because it started in different parts of the world. And what do we mean by industrialization? It is when everything started to become more modern, machinery were started to be used all over the world. People were living a more modern life. So this is what industrial revolution started. More factories were built, easier ways to do business. And one important point is that before industrial revolution, there was no middle class. We just had high class and low class people. And during when industrial revolution started, middle class was also established, and it was the beginning of the middle class. So we're going to see the Industrial Revolution, what is it, and how is it connected to Romanticism and the poets, authors or writers who spoke about Industrial Revolution in their poems. I will also be highlighting, okay. The Industrial Revolution refers to a series of significant shifts in traditional practices of agriculture, manufacturing, and transportation, as well as the development of new mechanical technologies that took place during the late 18th and 19th centuries in much of the Western world. So, what is Industrial Revolution? It refers to the shifts that took place, the changes that took place in the traditional practices of agriculture. I mean, traditionally, agriculture was done by people, manufacturing were handmade, transportation, moving from one place to another. All of these things were advanced during the Industrial Revolution. And it took place during the late 18th century and 19th centuries. We're not sure of the exact date of when it started around the world, but in Europe and United States, it was started in 1760 in United Kingdom. So this is what is Industrial Revolution. Just gonna highlight it here for everyone. During this time, the United Kingdom, as well as the rest of the Europe and the United States, soon after underwent drastic socio-economic and cultural changes. So there were a lot of changes that happened during Industrial Revolution in different aspects. Socially, there were changes socially among the people. There was rise of the middle class. Economically, culturally, there were so many differences during the Industrial Revolution. Some changes were good changes, some changes were not. During the late 18th century, the United Kingdom's economic system of manual and animal-based labor shifted toward a system of machine manufacturing, while more readily navigable roads, canals, and railroads for trade began to develop. So this is another important part. Okay. In the United Kingdom economic system, where there was manual and animal-based labor. Animals were doing the work. There were people who were doing farming. Animals were used in so many other production and manufacturing. But during the Industrial Revolution, machines took place of these laborers, took place of these people and these animals. So there was a shift to machinery manufacturing. Everything was done with machines, and people were focusing on making everything um, more technological, more using machines, and more roads were built, more railroads were built, so they can trade with other countries beside them, other cities, and they were using metal tools and more complex machines for manufacturing, for increasing production. The Industrial Revolution had profound effect upon society in United Kingdom. It gave rise to working and middle class and allowed them to overcome the long-standing economic oppression that they had endured for centuries beneath gentry and nobility. So, as we said above, one of the most important things that happened during the Industrial Revolution is the rise and the beginning of the middle class and the working class. The working class is the middle class itself, and it allowed them to overcome because they were middle class is considered neither high class nor low class, but because there were only two classes before, it was only high class or low class, they were considered in the low class section, and they were oppressed for a long period of time because there was no middle class. But during Industrial Revolution, one good thing that happened was the rise of the middle class, and these middle class people were now businessmen, lawyers, so many other professions, and they were able to make money, um, they were able to get their rights. Now, however, while employment opportunities increased for common working people, now focus here, there were employment that was increased for middle class people, for working people throughout the country. And the members of the middle class were able to become business owners. They were able to become business owners more easily. The conditions workers often labored under were brutal. So now these middle class people are getting a lot of benefits from industrialization, and they're very happy. But there's something that's not going right, and that is the laborers, the people who are working under the middle class, they were in a very brutal condition, very inhumane condition. Further, many of them were barely able to live off the wages they earned. Now, these laborers, these lower class people who were working under middle class people, the wage, the salary that they earned was so less and they were not able to live off it. Okay, this highlighting is very hard. During this time, the industrial factory was created. Now, there were factories getting built up for everything, which in turn gave rise to modern city. Now, there were modern cities getting built up because there were factories getting built up. Conditions within these factories were often deplorable and by today's standards, unethical. Now, these factories, the people who were working in these factories were in a very, very, very bad condition, in very unethical condition. Manufacturers frequently use children for labor purposes, and laborers were required to work long hours. So why were they in a very brutal condition and a very bad condition? Because these manufacturers, these factories, they usually targeted children and they wanted children to work for them, and they were getting paid very less. Okay, so let's continue. Um, Conditions were often dangerous, if not deadly. If it was not deadly, it was very dangerous because it caused a lot of diseases and factories. They were not caring about the lives of these children and these people who were working in the factory. So they were mostly exposed to dangerous chemicals, dangerous materials, working for long hours. They were getting exhausted. So for all these reasons, they were in a very dangerous situation and sometimes deadly. Now, there was a group of people in United Kingdom and they were called the Luddites. these Luddites, they felt that industrialization was very inhumane. It was very brutal. It was very bad for the conditions of the people who were working in factories, and they wanted change. So these group of people, they started protesting. They started um, calling out these people who were actually creating all these hazardous situations for the people who were working in factories. And not just they were not just protesting, at the same time they were going and they were breaking the machines, they were sabotaging. Here it is written already. Well, inhumane took protesting and sometimes sabotaging industrial materials and factories. By this, they mean that they were breaking and they were stealing and they were damaging these industrial machines and factories. So they can create more employment opportunities for people because machines were taking over the jobs of people, and also because they were so hazardous for the health and for the lives of the people who were working in the factories. So, while industrialization led to incredible technological developments throughout the Western world, many historians now argue that industrialization caused severe reductions in living standards for workers, both within United Kingdom and throughout the rest of the industrialized Western world. Now, we do agree that with industrial revolution, there was a lot of advancement in technology in the Western world, and they were able to advance more, to progress more. But however, there was severe reduction in living standards. That means the lives of these workers who were working in these factories during the time of Industrial Revolution were in a very bad condition, were in a very inhumane, brutal, and unhealthy condition. However, the new middle and working class that industrialism had established led to urbanization throughout industrial cultures, drastic population increases, there were more increase in population, and the introduction of relatively new economic system known as capitalism. So, with the rise of this new working class and the new middle class, there were a lot of advantages for these middle class people. Industrialization seemed to exemplify humankind's ability to dominate and manipulate nature by understanding its laws. So, with industrialization, it showed that people were able to they were having the ability to manipulate nature, to make use of nature by understanding its laws, by understanding the science behind it. And it also spurred cultural developments as it enabled the cheaper production of books and other printed materials, gave members of the middle class more leisure time, and made consumer goods more affordable and accessible for many. So, because of this industrialization, there were more machines, and because there were more machines, they were able to print more books, create more of the things of high class people, and this became middle class people were able to have more leisure time. Leisure is fun time supposedly, and they were able to get advantage of all the things that high class people were having advantage of because of industrialization. And everything became more affordable. It's not as expensive. It is less expensive. It's more cheap, and it's accessible for many. So many people are able to access it. Now, Romanticism developed in the United Kingdom in the wake of and in some measures as a response to the Industrial Revolution. Now we're going to see the connection between Romanticism and industrialization. So Romanticism developed in the United Kingdom because of some of the measures of industrialization, and these romantics were against industrial revolution. So many English intellectuals and artists in early 19th century considered industrialism inhumane and unnatural. So of course, many English intellectuals, artists, poets, writers, they saw industrialism inhumane. It was not something good for human beings who were working, the low class people generally. And they revolted. They started protesting and they were against it, sometimes quite violently. Sometimes it took a violent turn, like the people of Luditz who were going and breaking the machinery and damaging it, against what they felt to be increasingly inhumane and unnatural mechanization of modern life. So, why were they doing it? They were doing it because they saw that the Romantics saw that industrialism is something very inhumane. It is not good for the human beings. It's not good for the human population, and it is unnatural, and they were against it. So they started um, the Romanticism movement in United Kingdom. That's how the Romanticism started. It developed in United Kingdom. It became more famous. It became more known among the artists, the writers, the poets, etc. Now, poets such as Lord Byron, particularly in his addresses to the House of Lords and William Blake, most notably in his poem The Chimney Sweeper. Now we're going to see the Chimney Sweeper poem first. We will read it and then we will see what they are analyzing from his poem. Chimney Sweeper by William Blake. We're going to read it first and then we'll see what is the analysis behind the Chimney Sweeper. The Chimney Sweeper was written by William Blake. William Blake is a romantic poet, and his poems were focusing on industrialization. So, The Chimney Sweeper, when my mother died, I was very young, and my father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in sooth I sleep. There's little Tom Dacre, who cried when his head, that curled like a lamb's back, was shaved. So I said, hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, as Tom was sleeping, he had such a sight that thousands of sweepers, Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, were all of them locked up in coffins of black. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down a green plain, leaping, laughing, they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. Then, naked and white, all their bags left behind, they rise upon clouds and sport in the wind. And the angel told Tom, Tom, if he'd be a good boy, he'd have God for his father and never want joy. And so Tom awoke, and we rose in the dark and got with our bags and our brushes to work. Though the morning was cold, Tom was happy and warm. So if all do their duty, they need not fear harm. Just a quick summary of each stanza. Now, each four lines is called a stanza. And The Chimney Sweeper by William Blake is having 6 stanzas in total. In the first stanza, they're talking about that the death of the mother when little Tom was very young, and the father made him become a chimney sweeper. And it says that the little boy is cleaning the chimneys and he's sweeping the chimneys and he's sleeping in soot. Soot is in the chimneys, you might find this dark uh, ash kind of substance. It's called soot. Now, there's little Tom Dacre who cried when his head had that curls like a lamb's back was shaved. So I said, so little Tom Dacre is a boy who started crying when they shaved his head. Why did they shave his head? So he doesn't feel that the soot is changing his white hair to the color in it, and the soot gets stuck in his hair and damage his hair. So that's why they had his head shaved. Hush, Tom, never mind it, for when your head's bare, for when your head's shaved, that means you know that the soot cannot spoil your white hair. And so he was quiet, and that very night, that's why he was quiet. And the same night when Tom was sleeping, he had a dream. In his dream, he saw 1,000 sweepers like Dick, Joe, Ned, and Jack, and all of them were locked in coffins of black. The color of the coffins were black, so it shows death, it shows sadness. And by came an angel. So an angel came with a bright key, and he opened the coffins and let all of these chimney sweepers go free. And then it's showing that these chimney sweepers, the ones who were dead in the coffins, they were going down a very nice green plain, and they were laughing and they were running and they were happy, and they washed themselves in the river and under the shine of the sun, and they left their coffins, and they were going up to the clouds and in the winds. And the angel told Tom that if he will be a good boy, he is going to have God for his father and he will never want joy. So Tom woke up from the dark, and he took his bags and his brushes to go to work. Although the morning was very cold, Tom was feeling happy and he was feeling warm because he had this dream, and it made him feel comfort, it made him feel safe. And he's just going to go do his duty, and he is not going to be afraid of anything happening to him. So we're going to see the analysis of the chimney sweepers and how it is related to industrialism and romanticism. Mhm. Okay. So, in The Chimney Sweeper, spoke out and wrote extensively about the psychological and the social effects of the newly industrial world upon the individual, and felt rampant industrialization countered the human spirit and intrinsic rights of men. So in Chimney Sweeper, William Blake, he spoke about the psychological effects, the effects that were mental in the head, and also the social effects of the industrial world. What were the psychological effect? The sadness, the fear, the feeling of the scared, the feeling of dying one day, feeling of not being happy. So these are the psychological and the social effects that these people were considered as low class people. And these children had to work to earn their socially they were very low. So these are the effects that were showing in The Chimney Sweeper. And to a large extent, English Romantic intellectuals and artists felt that modern industrial world was harsh. Of course, they were seeing that the industrial world was very harsh. It was not good, and deadening to the senses and spirits. So they saw industrialization as something that was killing the senses, and it was killing the spirit of the people. Now, these intellectuals called for a return. These intellectuals, these romantics, they're saying they want to return back in life, in the spirit, and to the emotions and to the nature and to the ideals of pre-industrial past. So they don't want all these things that came with these benefits and advantages that came with industrialization. They want to go back to the life before industrialization started. This response and its various dimensions can be seen in the readings for the subunit. Byron's speech. Now we're talking about Lord Byron's speech in response to a law outlawing the activities of the Luddites. Now, we said earlier, who are Luddites? Luddites are the people who were protesting against industrialization, and they were damaging and sabotaging the machines in the factories, emphasizing the economic hardships that industrialization has created among working people. And he was actually Lord Byron was supporting these Luddites. He insists that Luddites are only reacting due to he's supporting them, and he's saying that Luddites are reacting this way because the circumstances are too bad for the people who are low class in industrialization period, and they are doing this. The Luddites, they are reacting this way because there is a lot of distress, there is a lot of tension. Only such desperation could have pushed the perpetrators despite the presence of military and police forces. So there are police forces and military that are not allowing people to attack factories, of course, but even though Luddites, they know that they're going to be caught or they will be punished for their actions, and there will be consequences, but still they continue to do what they are doing. To continue destroying the machinery, he emphasizes that underlying problem is that while new machinery allowed the capitalists are people like traders, to increase their profit, they were getting more money by making more factories. It did so by throwing out employment large numbers of workmen who were left in consequences to starve. Now, he's also saying that um, He's saying that although these machineries, there were a lot of machinery, and these machines were making more production, we're manufacturing more stuff, it was building more stuff. Um, and that helped the capitalists to earn more. The economy is rising. But at the same time, there was the negative side, and that is the people, the workmen who lost their jobs because these machines came in the factories. These people were starving to death and they were not having any job. And so they were starving to death. And that's why the Luddites were attacking the factories and they were breaking and sabotaging the machines. Rightly, according to Byron, the workers thus felt themselves to be sacrificed to improvements in mechanism. So these workers, they felt that they were being sacrificed for more advancement in during industrialization. Now, in Blake's chimney sweeper similarly reflects on the condition of workers displaced by the new industrialization and concomitant urbanization. So, in the chimney sweeper, also, William Blake is focusing on the conditions of workers. It's showing the conditions of a little child who is a chimney sweeper, and that his head is shaved off, and also he's afraid that he's gonna die. So these are the parts that shows the conditions of workers in the chimney sweeper. The child who speaks begins by commenting on his mother's death, but the central image of the poem is the contrast between Tom's vision of all the sweepers in the heaven, where they run down a green plain, leaping, laughing. So there is a contrast. We're going to see the difference in the same poem. William Blake is showing the 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 situation that this little boy Tom is as a sweeper, and he sees that he's in pain and he's scared, but at the same time he's seeing his other fellow sweepers who have died and they're going to a very good place, and the reality of their lives were ensued. So it shows that these people, they think the chimney sweepers, Tom is seeing a good future. He is able to see his fellow chimney sweepers going down the plain, green plain, laughing and having fun. But in reality, it is not like that. In reality, they are locked up in coffins of black. It's just a metaphor saying that they are locked up in coffins of black, showing that they are in big misery. The poem also suggests that this religious vision helps to maintain the system, as the last line states. Now, this poem at the same time is helping. It's kind of little bit helping the government or the industrial revolution, by saying that if you will be a good boy, that is, if you are going to do your work, your job, God will be your father and you will be in a very happy place. If all do their duty and if they continue to work long hours in dirty conditions, then they will receive their reward in heaven. This idea is the poem here. This idea is reiterated in Blake's London. Okay, now before we go to London, we will read London and then we will come and see the analysis. And then we're going to compare London and the chimney sweeper. So this is London by William Blake. It says, I wonder, I wander through each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness, marks of woe. In every cry of every man, and every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind forged manacles I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down palace walls. But most through midnight streets I hear how the youthful harlots curse, blast the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hears. So in the first line, chartered street, by chartered, they mean capitalized. That means something that brings them money. And the same chartered Thames, also, you know, the river Thames is very famous in London and it is considered nature. So here, chartered Thames, it is showing as if they're getting capital, they're getting money from Thames, and nature is not nature anymore. It has become a source of income. And marks in every face I meet, marks of weakness, marks of woe. So this person, whoever this I is an imaginary person. This person walks on the streets of London and he sees the streets where you know everything they're getting money from, they're getting income from, and chartered themes. And also he is able to see on the faces of these people weakness and woe. Woe is sadness. They're saying weakness, it's saying sadness. And in every cry of the man, in the cry of infants, he is able to see fear. He's able to see in every voice, he's in every band. In the forged manacles, I hear forged manacles is like shackles, like chains. The minds, it's showing that the minds are chained up and they're not allowed to have freedom. Now, how the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and hapless soldiers sigh, runs in blood down palace walls. So it shows that chimney sweepers, they cry, and the blackening church, this shows that the church is not doing their job and they are actually become not a good place for these people. We're going to see in the analysis more. And the hapless soldiers sigh, runs in blood down palace walls. So these soldiers who are sacrificing their lives for the country, actually their blood is running down the palace walls. But most through midnight streets, I hear how the youthful harlots curls. Harlots are prostitutes, and they're saying in the midnights he's able to hear the prostitutes are cursing and blast the newborn infant's tear and blight with plagues the marriage years. By this line, this imaginary person tries to show that everything is in chaos. Now we will see the analysis of London. Now, this idea is reiterated in Blake's London when he comments on how chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, setting up the contrast between the sweepers and the church. So that shows the difference between the sweepers and the church, even as it suggests their interconnection. They're showing that these chimney sweepers, they are crying, and also the blackening church at the same time shows that church is has become not a trusted place. It's a place where it is promoting industrialization, and it is being inhumane and brutal. London also begins to develop another key point of romantic reaction to industrialization and urbanization. There's sense that these processes are not only economically fair, but also dehumanizing and unnatural. So now the romantics, they are not just pointing out that industrialization is not economically unfair. It's not only economically unfair because the lower class people are not getting paid enough for the job they're doing and for the long hours they're working, but it's also dehumanizing. It is unhumane. It is not fair for individuals, for human, for their health, and it is very unnatural. These images Blake begins with, that is the repeated chartered that is capitalized, and marks of the opening stanza suggest how humankind has transformed the Thames into yet another human-dominated thoroughfare. The Thames is chartered just like the street and links the denaturalization and transformation. Um, So it shows that by chartered themes, it shows that even the nature, the natural things of the world, the natural gifts of the world are also converted into things that can bring them money and turned into being industrial and to transformation and disempowerment of individuals who now show marks of weakness. And also in London, they are saying that it shows marks of weakness and marks of sadness on the faces of the people who are walking the streets of London. The problem, as the famous last line in the second stanza indicates, is one of the consciousness and material practices, as it is mind forged manacles that he hears in every voice. So he hears whoever is speaking. It is a metaphor. It is saying that this William Blake is able to hear the chains that are tying the minds of these people who are walking the streets. That means that their freedom, they're not having the freedom of expressing themselves. They're not having their own independency. They're not being independent, and their minds are forged with manacles. Their minds are forged with chains. Their minds are locked with chains that he hears in every voice of people who are talking. Human minds have created these handcuffs that have chained themselves with very process, intellectual and material that supposedly were to set people free. So in London, he's saying that the people are having handcuffs in their hand uh, because of industrialization, which was supposed to set people free, but it is not setting people free. It is actually chaining them up. Now we will see the Wordsworth's poem, which is connected to industrialization and Romanticism. Wordsworth emphasizes the modern disconnection from nature. So with industrialization, with modernization, people are getting disconnected from nature. Little we see in nature that is ours. This is citing in examples of proofs of this analysis, averring that he'd rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn, so might I standing on the pleasant lea have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. These are examples from his poems that says that he is disconnected, people are disconnected from nature, and he would rather be a pagan than be a person right now in industrialization, the time of industrialization. Wordsworth implies that we have lost a sense of mystery of nature and its mythic and powerful element as epitomized in classical myths. Although his poem doesn't directly show industrialization, but it indirectly shows that this world is not the same as it used to be, and it has lost its spiritual connection with nature. And he wants us that we treat the world as an instrument and as a route to economic end and not focus on economy. While the poem does not directly address its industrialization, it epitomizes or gives examples of a romantic critique of the economic materialism and instrumental rationality that defined industrialization. So William Wordsworth's poem, "The World is Too Much with Us," doesn't directly address industrialization, but it indirectly brings in examples of how our world is affected with industrialization. Now, in his other sonnet, composed upon Westminster's Bridge in September 3, we are going to see that now. We will read it first, and then we will come to its analysis. This is also a sonnet. written by William Wordsworth. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by a sight so touching in its majesty. This city now doth, like a garment, wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. Shapes, towers, domes, theatres, and temples lie upon into the field and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock, or hill. Never saw, I never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. Um, he wrote this sonnet in the first years of the 19th century and provides a slightly different view of London. Now, we saw London, the poem written by William Blake, and we're going to compare the poem London with William Wordsworth's poem Westminster Bridge, composed upon Westminster Bridge. So in London, it showed that the streets of London are all chartered and they're capitalized. Their people are focusing on them for income, to get money, to increase the economy. But here in Wordsworth's poem, it is slightly different. It is showing that there is hope that London can become better. It is showing that this change is evident, it is seen during the morning when everyone is asleep, when everything is asleep, and he is able to hear the silence, he's able to enjoy the nature, emphasizing the possibility of renewal and reconnection with something divine in nature, even in the midst of the city. So, even in the middle of the city, there is a chance, there is a possibility that there will be reconnection with nature. That possibility, however, is attainable at this moment in the morning when the city seems more at one with the nature. So, this possibility is only seen during the morning, where the city seems to be more connected to nature. That's its ships and towers and domes and theaters and temples. All of them are closed for the moment and they're all sleeping. For this moment, everything is bright and glittering in the smokeless air. The contrast with the way the city normally is intensifies and experiences, as Wordsworth repeatedly comments that nothing, even in the more wild regions, is more associated with, can compare. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock, or hill. These are just examples of from his poem that shows that he is able to see change in London, where the city is connecting to nature. Although it is not seen throughout the day, it is very rare. It's only seen during the morning when everything is fast asleep. So these are examples from his poem that prove so. Unlike the Thames in Blake's London, which is chartered, the Blake in William Blake's poem London, the river Thames is said to be chartered, rendered little different from the streets here. The river glideth at its own sweet will, here in William Wordsworth's poem, he's saying that the river is gliding at its own will, like it's having its own freedom to move and nobody is controlling it. However, in London, written by Blake, he's showing that the Thames is controlled by the people. And it's in the poem of Wordsworth, it shows that there is a possibility of recovering connection to nature, even in the center of the city. Doing so, it also embodies the romantic emphasis on consciousness and perspective. So it is also showing us that there is a different perspective, that there is hope, that the city will become a better place. While the material conditions of morning, example, the city still being asleep, enable Wordsworth's speaker to have the experience, it also seems to derive from his own ability to unconsciously open himself to the world as the city itself does it at this moment. So here he's not only showing that the city is connecting to the nature, he is also portraying that he is also able to connect to the nature because the city is able to connect to the nature, and allows himself merely to exist within the bounty of the sun, the air, and the morning. This sonnet suggests the ways that Romanticism even in reacting against industrialization and urbanization, did not simply call to a return to older modes of living, but stressed the importance of reconfiguring our relationships with the world, with the connection to the world. So, in this sonnet, Wordsworth didn't just criticize industrialization, saying that we have to go back to the old times where there was no industrialization. He shows that there is a possibility for people to enjoy nature in the middle of all these chaos that's happening during industrialization. And it is and it's stressing the importance of relationship to the world, a relationship that for many romantics industrialization has thrown out of balance. So he's showing that this relationship of people with nature can still be retrieved, can still be saved, even if there is industrialization and that has made everything so unbalanced. And to summarize everything all together, the Industrial Revolution refers to the massive economic, technological, and social changes that transformed Western Europe. So, what is industrialization? It refers to the big economic, technological, and social changes that brought changes in Western Europe and in the United States through the mechanization, like through bringing in more machines for production and reorganization of labor into factory, changing the form of employment in the factory system during the beginning and the late 18th century in the United Kingdom. So when was it? It was during the beginning and the late 18th century in the United Kingdom. While the Industrial Revolution produced incredible wealth, even though there was a lot of wealth and money and income during the time of industrialization, and enabled the middle classes to become more dominant. Now the middle class were gaining power. It was rise of the middle class, and allow some in working class lives of more stability. It was giving more stability to the middle class people. It also drove many into horrific working conditions. Now, the negative side is that it brought in very inhumane conditions for many other, destroying the livelihoods of so many other who were working as laborers in those factories, and had devastating consequences for the natural environment. And the nature was also having a very bad, devastating consequences because of industrialization. The nature was in danger because of industrialization. Now, British Romantic poets and thinkers reacted against the Industrial Revolution on a number of fronts. So these British Romantic poets, they were against Industrial Revolution, and they did a lot of things, a lot of writings to act on this purpose, as illustrated in poems by Blake and Wordsworth, attacking the economic devastation to working people, including children. It's confining human consciousness to an instrument view of nature and other people, and its demystification of nature. So these British romantics, they were portraying and they were showing to the world that industrial revolution is not good for so many reasons, and they were attacking the economic situation that the working class, the low class people were in, including children. And it was showing that how other people and nature was in danger because of industrialization. The examples that you can use while talking about industrialization is Blake Williams' London, Blake Williams' The Chimney Sweeper, Byron, maiden speech in the House of Lords. There's a speech of Lord Byron, and William Wordsworth's composed upon Westminster Bridge, and William Wordsworth's The World is Too Much with Us. So you can take in parts of the poems that was discussed up. As you can see, there's a lot of sightings of these poems that you can use to say that these poets were romantic poets, and they were against industrialization. And proof example, these are the examples from the poem, from each poems from each poem. So that was it for industrialization and romanticism, and how these poets connected and how these poets wrote about industrialization in their poems and how they reacted as romantic poets towards industrialization. That was it for today, and we completed industrialization and romanticism and seeing the connection between industrialization and romanticism. We will be continuing with the poetry part, talking about William Wordsworth in more detail and Percy Shelley in more detail. The videos will be posted for these two tomorrow, inshallah. So I wish you all the best for your exams or for your studies. And I really hope that everybody benefited from this video. And goodbye.